Hello. Hmm. Okay. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Anomalies. This is a program about the twists and turns that life takes, often twists and turns that are rather mysterious. I'm one of your hosts, Dan Hall, and with me is one of my co-hosts. Oh, I'm getting the message that my internet connection's not stable. I hate that. Let
What a
me
way
check
to
something
what
here.
a way to start an interview.
Yeah, what a way to start. Yeah.
You sound
Typical,
fine to
though.
me, Bruce.
Dan, you sound great. Your voice is a little shaky. It's not clear
Hmm.
to me. It's not coming clear to me.
Well, that might be because of my internet message I'm getting here. I'm going to start over again, if that's
Yeah, just
okay.
start over. Just
Sure.
it's easier than me trying to edit it. So yes, please
Yeah.
start over.
Okay. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Anomalies. This is a show about the twists and turns that one could take in life, and sometimes those twists and turns are pretty mysterious. I'm one of your hosts, Dan Hall. Been doing this for a while with my good friend and co-host, Dave Jinks. Dave, have we thought about how long we've been doing this? How long have we been doing this?
I think 2011, 2010. Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's been like 14 years
yeah. Let's hope we get it right at some point in time.
eventually.
Yeah, eventually. Um, so I'm always gratified when we have guests, return guests, come back on the show. And tonight we have somebody who's been here before, Bruce Smith, who came and regaled us with the tales of the Ramtha School of Enlightenment. He's also written an interesting book on a very interesting character, and that is D.B. Cooper. And he's going to talk about his book and the mystery that surrounds Mr. Cooper. So, Bruce, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Yeah. I couldn't help but think about this program. I went to Michigan in about sometime in September, end of September, 1st of October. And I went through the pre-check, the TSA pre-check, and I thought, well, things are going pretty well. Then I forgot that I left my cell phone in my pocket, and I didn't empty it out, so I got stopped by the TSA people, and they had to search me and all that stuff. But for some reason, I got thinking about DB Cooper because there's an incident where a guy walked on board a plane with a bomb, and my cell phone didn't necessarily uh, wasn't as much of an issue as a bomb. But so take us into DB Cooper. How did you get interested in DB Cooper, and then tell us about the narrative of the story.
Okay. Well, D.B. Cooper stole his airplane in 1971, 52 years ago. Just had the anniversary date, the day before Thanksgiving. So that was like a week or two ago. And in fact, we just had the annual conference, the DB CooperCon conference,
CooperCon.
which is turning into a regular thing every year, and it's fairly well attended. 100, people come every day. It's good. Um, for those who are unfamiliar with the story, this is back in the era when there was a lot of skyjacking going, of hijacking, and most of the planes that people stole, they just said, "Fly me to Cuba," and we're good. So there was no money involved, no shooting, no bombs or guns or anything like that. It was all political, and there were over 300 skyjackings from 1968 on. But by 1971, people were getting pretty antsy about guys who stole airplanes. And D.B. Cooper had a very unique skyjacking. He was the first one that got away by skydiving out of the airplane. And he was really the first one that had a very concise, thoughtful, planned out extortion crime. And he stole an airplane. He got on in Portland, Oregon, on a milk run. It was a 20-minute flight from Portland to Seattle. And he handed As the plane's rolling down the runway, he handed the stewardess sitting behind him in the galley a note, and she thought he wanted to pick her up, was giving her a phone number or something like that, you know. And as they're taking off at the end of the runway, he turns back to the stewardess and says, "Miss, I really want you to look at that note. I think you're going to want to see it." She opens it up, and it's like, "Miss, I have a bomb. I'm skyjacking. I'm hijacking your airplane. I want you to sit next to me." So she comes in, he sits next to him. Then he opens his briefcase, and there's sticks of what appear to be dynamite and a big battery, and there's wires and there's switches and things like that. And she goes, "Oh my God." And she gets very rattled. She stands up. She has the note that the guy gave her that she had put in her pocket. And the other flight attendant that was back there in the economy section of the airplane, the back of the aircraft, her name was Tina Mucklow. And she saw that her colleague was rattled and yeah, you know. So she walks over to say, "Hey, you know, what's going on? Can I help?" And Florence says, "We're being hijacked. This guy has a bomb," passes the note. She runs off to the cockpit to hang out with the pilots and safety. And she leaves Tina behind. So Tina is with the skyjacker all by herself. And it turns out she really proved her mettle. She really kept things together and was instrumental in making sure that this was not a tragedy, that this was just a fascinating true crime story as it unfolded. She sat next to Cooper for the next 2.5 hours as they circled Seattle Airport, SeaTac, waiting for $200,000 to arrive and for 4 parachutes to be delivered. That was the ransom. You give me $200,000, 4 parachutes, I'll give you back your passengers. And when you fly me wherever I want to go, I'll give you back your airplane. And Northwest Orient Airlines, who were flying this particular plane, it's known as Flight 305, it was a 727. And they accepted the deal, as they usually did. Most airlines wanted to placate a hijacker because it was a lot cheaper and it made more business sense. Just you do what he wants. You give all the passengers like some free meals and booze, and you give them a free ticket for another plane someday. Everybody's happy. We get our plane back. We're making money the next day. Now the FBI hated that, and so the airlines and the FBI were at loggerheads about what to do with skyjackers. And there were times in other skyjackings where that the airlines colluded with the skyjacker to thwart the FBI, because the FBI wanted to storm the plane. They had snipers everywhere. They just wanted to shoot the place up. And in fact, 2 weeks before Cooper, they did that and they killed 3 people. Or they shot out the tires, and the skyjacker said, "Oh yeah, watch this." And he shot everybody that was on the plane. It was a small little plane. It was like a charter commuter kind of plane down in Jacksonville, Florida. And that's known as the 58 November incident. And to this day, I believe the FBI is still on the hook for wrongful death convictions. The families are still taking the FBI to court and trying to get some money out of the Bureau, but the Bureau just stonewalls them. At any rate, Cooper, they circle, they get everything, they land at SeaTac Airport, he releases the passengers. The FBI is a little confused, a little disorganized. The passengers waited in the rain outside the airplane for 20 minutes, waiting for a bus to pick them up, to take them to the terminal. The FBI didn't want the plane anywhere near the terminal because if the bomb goes off, they don't want a lot of collateral damage. And so it made sense to keep it at the end of the runway. But why no one ever called a bus company or, Northwest Orient, send us a bus over here, that shows you the kind of things that fell through the cracks in terms of the overall organization. After 2.5 hours on the ground, refueling and getting the parachutes and the money, Cooper releases 2 of the flight attendants. There was one in first class who had very little interactions with Cooper. Her name was Alice Hancock. Alice leaves. Florence, the very nervous one, he lets her go too. And Tina stays with him. So Tina has been with him for several hours, sitting next to him. and he keeps her on board. And ironically, Cooper knew a lot about the plane, but there was one thing he didn't know, and that is how to release the lever for the aft stairs that could be deployed in flight. Now, he knew the plane could fly. He knew the plane could, the onboard flight stairs could be lowered down in flight, which was really top secret information at that time. Nobody really knew it. Northwest Orient didn't know it. They thought, oh my God, he wants to lower the stairs. He wants to jump out. Parachutes, oh my God, we're going to crash. The pilots were freaking out. And it wasn't until the FBI and the CIA told him, I said, no, Cooper knows what he's doing. We're doing similar stuff over here in Vietnam. This is 1971, the Vietnam War still going on. And he says, yeah, we're using 727s we drop the stairs down, we throw cargo out. There's a lot of rumors about commandos also jumping out, but that's never been proven. And it's suspected that maybe Cooper was one of those commandos because he knew a lot about how to jump out of the plane. He said, don't go over 10,000 feet. Keep it unpressurized, keep the wheels down and locked, and set the wing flaps at 15 degrees. Now, the pilot told me, he said, when Cooper told us to set the flaps at 15, I knew he knew something about airplanes, because the 727 was the only Boeing product at that time that had a pre-dense setting for 15 degrees. 707 was 13 degrees. The 717 was 40 degrees. So there's all kinds of little settings on all the shifts and the levers and things like that. And the flaps are the things in the wings that curl down to give the plane more lift so you can get slower and slower. And it's really good when you're coming in for a landing. You want to come in real slow, as slow as you can, but you don't want to come down like a rock. You want to come down nice and easy under control. So that's what the flaps do. So they were able to get the plane flying steady at about 180 miles an hour, which is pretty slow for a jet. And the wheels are down, so there's a lot of drag and there's a lot of turbulence, and it's a rainy November night, and there's a lot of wind and rain, and the plane's bouncing and everything. And Cooper wants to take off with the staircase down. And the pilot said, we're not doing that at all. I don't care what the FBI says, what the CIA says, what anybody says. We're not taking off with the staircase down. So Cooper has to lower it, and he didn't know how. And he knew he didn't know how. And that's why Tina was there. He said, we're not going to take off with the staircase down. I need Tina to stay. So Tina stayed with him for a total, as it turns out, that day, about 5 hours, quite a bit of time. And she turns out to be the primary witness. She knew him and his inflection, his vocalizations, his language, his slang, the way he said things, smoking cigarettes. She would be lighting his cigarettes. She smoked a few herself, sitting with him. So Tina has even told us nowadays that when she was sitting there, she even not only prayed for herself and the safety of the passengers, she prayed for Cooper too, which I find to be remarkable. And she kept her cool the whole time. She kept Cooper cool, calm, and collected. And the fact that he could be with the people that he threatened with a bomb for 2.5 hours as they circled Seattle is remarkable crowd control. So the man had chops. The man had command presence, and he never broke a sweat. And that may be the primary clue to who Cooper was. It's like, this guy knows what he's doing. He's pretty organized. And the FBI, many of the agents in the FBI recognize that this is not your average Joe. It's not the wide held view nowadays, but back during the skyjacking, it's like, yeah, Cooper's a pretty sharp cookie. So they take off from SeaTac with there's 3 pilots in the front. Tina's in the back with Cooper, and she shows them the lever, which is a really simple thing. It's just a stick on one side of the door, and you swing it that way, and the stairs come down a little bit. And you have to push them down after that because the wind is 200 miles an hour or 180 miles an hour. The wind is kind of keeping the stairs up. But if you walk down the stairs, they'll eventually come down. And that's what Cooper did. And he jumped, and the stairs came back, and there was a pressure bump. And it's like, whoa. And the plane, the pilot's term, the plane curtsied, and they had to level it out. And the question is, where did that happen? They know it happened around 8:13, but where was the plane at 8:13? Because if you don't know where Cooper jumped, you're not exactly sure where he landed. And so that is still debated today. It's still controversial where they think he landed. They have never found anything. And to this day, nothing has been found on in the DB Cooper case. No body, no parachute, no bomb, no money, except for $6,000 or so that was found 8.5 years later, buried on a Columbia River beach known as Tina Bar. And to this day, nobody knows how the money got there or when. So we have two mysteries.
So one of the things I remember about in your book that you were kind enough to lend me is the notion that he chose, or he was given certain denominations of money. So it was rather kind of a bulky sack of money to carry around. And that he also initially wanted to go to Mexico, if I remember that correctly. And
when
the
they
plane,
were getting ready for takeoff, when he said, "Okay, let's get the show on the road," they said, "Where are we going?" And he said, "Fly me to Mexico."
and they couldn't do that.
Yeah, and the pilot said, "Well, we're going to need a flight plan." And he says, "Oh, we'll do it in the air," which is legally true. You can file a flight plan in the air. You don't have to file your flight plan before you actually take off. It's counterintuitive in some ways, but legally that's true. So Cooper knew some things that were not commonsensical or universally understood. He knew inside stuff. So and also too, it's widely considered, but not universally considered, but widely considered that saying fly me to Mexico at 10,000 feet from SeaTac is a very clever ploy to make sure you know where you're going to be. Because any plane that flies out of SeaTac south is going to have to fly in a predetermined flight corridor in the air. It's called Victor 23. Now, most people think planes can fly anywhere, and technically they do. Okay, they can. But in terms of air traffic control and commercial aircraft and military aircraft and passenger, any kind of charter craft or anything like that, you have to fly in a predetermined corridor. If you're flying at 30,000 feet, you got to go be here and there. And these corridors, they're like highways in the sky. And you have to stay within that corridor. And the Victor 23 corridor, which is going south from SeaTac Airport, is about 10 miles wide. It's a little less than 10. It's 8 nautical miles exactly. But when you do the calculation between nautical and statute miles, it ends up being 9.7 miles or something. At any rate, so there was some variability about where the plane could actually navigate through. But Cooper had a pretty good idea of where he was going to jump. He knew where the SeaTac Airport was. He knew he's flying at 200 miles an hour. He knew how long he was in the air. And so he would be able to calibrate when he jumped, where is he going to land? Because at 10,000 feet, he's going to be drifting in the wind. It was variable November temperatures and wind speed, maybe 15, 20 miles an hour gusts at that level, that he's going to drift maybe 2 or 3 miles. That's what they figured. But
Dave, why don't you jump in there too?
Oh,
Let me monopolize.
I'm wondering, you said 200,000 he asked for in 1971.
Yep.
If Google is correct, it's about 1.5 million
Pretty much, yeah.
Today's dollar. So he did ask for 200K. Doesn't sound like much when you hear it, but can't even buy a house for that. But he was asking for 1.5 million, which is
I bought a house in 1971, 40 grand.
Yep. Well,
a 3-bedroom house for 40 grand in 1971. So do the math.
That's half a century ago. I hate to remind you.
It was a half century ago.
Half a century. So he asked for an amount that probably was, I mean, is there an amount where the FBI and the airlines would say, screw it, we're not doing that, we can't come up with that. What's the cost benefit analysis? Because you kind of alluded to that. That's what corporations do. back then and today for sure is that how much is it going to cost to compensate the family, you know, if somebody dies or if we get sued, how much do our lawyers cost, all that. So where do you think he came up with the 1.5 million? He planned everything out.
He did. And some inside story, the skyjacking, the DB Cooper skyjacking cost Northwest Orient Airline $0.
Hmm.
Okay. Everything was backstopped by their insurance carrier, Global Indemnity. They were on the hook for the $200,000. Now,
Yeah.
Cooper knew more inside information, or presumably, arguably knew inside information. To their credit, the FBI anticipated this crime or anything like it, an extortion, a crime of extortion, where under unusual circumstances, some criminal is going to ask for money and you want to give them the money right away. You don't want to have to say, the banks are closed right now, dude. Monday morning, we'll bring the money over by Monday. In the meantime, you want some pizza? You want pepperoni on that pizza? No, the FBI did not want that. So they had already arranged with banks near major FBI field offices, such as Seattle. They had already arranged to stockpile large sums of cash and already to microfiche all the serial numbers. You don't want to do that at the last minute. You want to just get the money together, get it over there and get the guy in, you know, and then go on to the next step and try to catch the guy. Now, Seafirst Bank, biggest bank in Seattle, had a special vault for this federal FBI money. Interestingly enough, they had the 200,000, what they actually had was 250,000. So Cooper could have asked for a little bit more money. Now, most of that money was in 20s and only 30 grand was in 10s. Now, the question is, if you're going to skydive with a pile of money in a bag, how much weight can you handle? That's a real determining factor. Now, most skydivers that I've talked to, they felt that the $200,000 that Cooper had asked for is going to weigh between 20 and 25 pounds. And that's about the upper limit of asymmetrical weight loads that you want when you're skydiving. And arguably, you could have asked for, as other skydivers did, who learned from Cooper. They said, we don't want 20s, we want hundreds, and we'll wait till the hundreds get here. All right. So, you know, this right off the bat, there were refinements. And you almost have to wonder, is there a criminal underground where this information is passed along and, you know, whatever. But at any rate, how did Cooper know that the money would be readily provided? As it turns out, the money was the first to arrive. It was the parachutes that took a long time to get there. And it was kind of convoluted. The Cooper asked for 2 back chutes and 2 front chutes, and he asked for back and front. And a lot of people think, well, he's using common conversational parlance. Whereas if he was really a commando or a skydiver, he would have asked for, give me a main and a reserve. Those are the technical terms that you would use. Others say, well, Cooper knew he was talking to the average Joe. He was talking to flight attendants. He was talking to pilots. He's talking to people that don't know anything about parachutes. He's going to use the common terms like back and front, knowing full well that the front chute's going to be a reserve chute. It's going to be a little bit smaller. It's going to come in a smaller pouch, and it's going to be a little lighter. And the back chute's going to be the big thing on the back with the straps and the buckles and the, you know, all of this kind of thing. And you got to link it, you pull your straps down and things like that. It's going to be a real deal. And so that's what he got. He got 2 front, 2 back. And the 2 back came from a skydiving school in Issaquah. And the front chutes, ironically, came from a guy in Renton who had the 2 back chutes because he was an aerial stunt pilot that people at SeaTac knew about, and they knew that he would give them up. He was that kind of guy. And they called him, and he had them delivered by taxi cab. And that's how they got to SeaTac. So it wasn't like you could just go out to your local sporting goods stores, you know, your big five sporting, give me two back shoes. No, it wasn't like that at all. Or go down to Boeing Field and, you know, go to some surplus store and say, give me two back shoes. It wasn't like that in 1971. So you had to know people in the sport, in the field, who might have something like that that could be used. And it took a couple hours to make all these phone calls and get the guy on the taxi cab and get the delivery. In all of this, nobody thought to take a picture of anything. So we have no photographic evidence of anything dealing with the Cooper case. The only thing the closest we have are TV news cameras of the passengers streaming into the Northwest Airlines terminal once that bus took them from the end of the runway to the terminal. That's all we have.
So it seems like even in 1971, the FBI would have had some sort of technology, maybe not. That was kind of pre-computer era even. I mean,
Yep, it was, yeah.
Common computer. Was there anything they could have done to track Cooper or sabotage him in some way? And was anything done, as far as you know, in that respect?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I do know in terms of tracking him. They tracked other skydivers, and the question is that when other copycats asked for their parachutes, the Fed slipped in a tracker, and the copycats knew that they were going to be tracked, so they pulled the tracker out, or they brought their own parachute on board and threw the tracked parachute out the plane to fool the FBI, who went on a wild goose chase over the wilds of Nevada or someplace to look for that parachute that had a tracker on it. So it was a cat and mouse kind of game. Now the question is, did they put a tracker on any of the Cooper stuff? And the short answer is no, according to the FBI. The longer answer is we really don't know, because tracking devices were available where they utilized. And there are some people, there was somebody who was attached at McCord Air Force Base in Tacoma, who was working for NORAD, and he was originally assigned to come up with the parachutes. And he was told, don't put the trackers in. So that has not been confirmed by the Air Force. That is a Air Force personnel, an officer who, after in his retirement, said this is what he did the night of the skyjacking. It has not been confirmed, and I don't know if it's true or not.
And wasn't there a way that they could have? I mean, when you think of 9/11, you had jets that, well, maybe 9/11 is a bad example because a lot of things went wrong and not according to protocols during that event, but couldn't you track it visually with another jet, or from ground radar? Probably not fine enough detection coming from technology years ago, but there's no other way to see when he jumped, or was it just too expensive to do that?
Well, it seems like one of the things that I read about was there actually were some jets that accompanied this Northwest Orient flight. And of course, it was on radar. So I'm going to dovetail with Dave's question. What about that? Weren't those efforts, those kind of efforts, helpful in figuring out where he went?
These dynamics, this is all true. There were jets that were sent up the tail of the plane to eyeball Cooper jumping out. They were, and what they did or what they didn't do is controversial to this day. What we do know is 2 F-106s were scrambled out of McCord, and they joined up with Flight 305 about 20 miles south of McCord, somewhere around Castle Rock. And they couldn't see anything visually. And the cloud cover there was thick clouds at 8,500 feet. Now the plane's at 10,000 feet, so it's slightly above the rain, but it's still soupy. The pilots reported we're in the soup. Now, the flight controller, I've talked to the guy who was the flight controller from Toledo South and was the guy in charge of directing air traffic for Cooper's plane, the F-106s, and a third chase plane came up, an Air National Guard from Oregon, came out of Portland Airport, which was a T-33. The guy's name, the air traffic controller's guy name is Cliff Ammerman. He told me that when the plane got to around Woodland, so it was just, you know, in the Kelso Woodland area, he diverted the F-106s to be about 10 miles east of Cooper, and he put them at 20,000 feet for a variety of reasons. One is they would be able to save fuel and last longer. They'd be in the chase longer and they wouldn't have to return to base and they wouldn't have to send up other planes. And their primary mission at that point, they had already given up trying to visually locate the plane or Cooper. They could see it on radar a little bit. And the mission for the F-106s changed at that point. They were armed and could shoot down the plane, and they were going to be the backup. In case it was determined that Cooper was going to use this, again, like 9/11, as an aerial bomb, like as a large cruise missile, if they determined that Cooper was going to cause some big trouble and the plane had to be taken out, the F-106s would be on standby for that job. The actual the eyeballs, putting eyeballs on Cooper's plane was left to the pilot of the T-33 out of PDX. Ammerman placed him right behind Cooper, about a mile behind. To get any closer would be unsafe because of the air turbulence from the engines coming out of the 305. About a mile is as close as you get. But because of the soup, he never saw a thing. Now, to this day, it's highly controversial. How come nobody's radar picked up Cooper jumping out of the plane? T-33, the F-106s, with the SAGE radars, the Air Force's radar out of SeaTac, out of McCord. How come the FAA radar scans out of PDX Airport and out of their major regional radar installation in Salem, Oregon? How come nobody saw Cooper leave the plane? Because the radar in those days was good enough to see a human being jumping out of an airplane. And no one's saying. FBI agents don't come to CooperCon. Except for this past year, we had the first one ever come, Larry Carr. Nobody from the Air Force has ever come. Nobody from the military has ever come. CIA, you know, forget about it. So there is a curtain of silence over some of the issues in DB Cooper that have never been penetrated. And the question is why? Hence, I wrote my book. The case, my title of my book is DB Cooper and the FBI.
FBI.
A case study of America's only unsolved skyjacking. I'm only presenting the facts as I know them and offering plausible understandings of why certain things were done and certain things were not done.
My sense in reading your book, Bruce, is that you're pretty critical of the FBI. Would that be did they drop the ball somewhere in this investigation? And if so, how?
I wouldn't say, I'm often accused of being critical of the FBI. And what I'm critical of is bad police work. I'm not anti-FBI. I am not defund the police. I am not any of those kind of guys. We need lots of police. We need lots of FBI agents. What we need is better management, and we need better critical thinking in terms of emergencies and high-stress situations. Now, the FBI, for all of their capacities and all of their successes in catching bad guys, have fundamental limitations or liabilities because of their size. Bureaucracies, law enforcement bureaucracies can only do certain things at a certain time in a certain way. That's because otherwise they don't function. And what you see on TV is not the reality. Law and order is a fantasy. I have never met an FBI, I have never met a law enforcement official as smart as Lieutenant Captain Olivia Benson. They don't exist. I've never met them. There are plenty of smart people, but people who in law enforcement, but people who can hold different possibilities and thinking like this, because Cooper was a unique plan that involved multiple jurisdictions, and he did it on a holiday weekend. When guys, I gotta be, buddy, I can't join the case until tomorrow because I gotta have turkey with my wife. It was the junior agents, so all the senior agents were involved Wednesday night during the Skyjack. But things slowed down over Turkey Day, the next day, Thanksgiving. Nobody went looking for Cooper on the ground until 40 hours later. The first people that actually went looking for Cooper on the ground in the woods was Friday. So the skyjacking takes place Wednesday night. After lunch on Friday, guys start looking. But how many guys start looking? 20 guys. In an area, the search area that they were assigned was 20 square miles. How are 20 guys going to do 20 square miles? They can't. And it's a limitation. It's a limitation. How many warm bodies you got? How many guys you got with badges and guns are available? How many other crimes are going on? Who's going to do the work? How many boots can we put on the ground? When can we get them on the ground? Where are they going to eat dinner that night? Who's going to pick up that tab? They're going to put them in motels? What motels? There's a lot of logistics. And the FBI really struggled. They also had conceptual problems. The FBI, they wear nice clothes, nice shoes, they wear suits, they wear the tie, and they're the Bureau of Investigation. They investigate. They don't go tromping through the woods. They're not the Federal Bureau of Woodsmanship and Searching. That's not that agency. That's not the LL Bean crew, all right? Mm-hmm. The guys who went looking in the woods are the local grunts, the guys who are on the bottom of the law enforcement ladder, sheriff's deputies and volunteer firemen, and the guys that they know in town that they could trust, who could handle themselves in the woods because they go deer hunting with them every year. Those are the guys that went looking for Cooper that Friday. And it took days for the FBI to really gear up. I just read a report today. The military provided helicopters to the FBI to fly over the search areas where they think he was. And the FBI gave him the helicopters back because the Air Force wanted $2,000 a day per helicopter. And the FBI didn't want to pay. It was going to bust the budget. So right off the bat, you have bureaucratic issues. Mm-hmm. $2,000 was $10,000 a day per plane.
What's the best guess about where did they start this search? What's the best guess about where he actually jumped out?
It's controversial to this day. The FBI, and there's lots of documents that support this, and there's been a lot of analysis of the documents, and it supports the FBI. They say that the plane was flying down the middle of this flight corridor known as Victor 23. That put the plane a little bit east of I-5. And they say well, if he jumped at 8:13, that's when the pressure bump, and that's when the plane went, that's about 8:13, maybe 8:12, maybe 8:14, but somewhere around there, that put the plane somewhere around Laconia, Battleground, that the initial understanding was Cooper jumped over Battleground, drifted to the northeast because the wind was coming from the southwest, and he landed somewhere in the Amboy aerial area. And that's where they went looking. And they put a lot of guys in. So 20 guys went that first day. the following week, they got a lot of FBI agents. They had dozens of FBI agents, and by then it was time to go just knock on doors. They weren't going into the woods. They just want to knock on doors, look in the woodsheds, look in the outhouses, where any place where Cooper may have hid or left some evidence or built a campfire or something like that. And the people who live in that area tell you, oh, old timers, they say, oh yeah, I remember when the FBI here, they were all over this place. So they'll talk about that. And then 3 or 4 or 5 months later, they came back with soldiers from Fort Lewis. And that was a big search. There was hundreds of guys. And they were doing it just like you see in the movies. They're like 5 feet apart from each other, and they're walking through the woods, and they're going up the ravines and the mountains and coming down the hills and the cliffs and things like that. And the brambles and the salal and the blackberry, and it's like getting torn up, looking. And that's what the soldiers did in March and April for 4 weeks. So didn't find anything. Now, when the money was found 8 years later, and was found 20 miles to the west. And that started the thinking, like, maybe the plane was not where we think it was. Maybe it was further west. And maybe Cooper jumped kind of where the money was found. And maybe he planted the money on the beach because it was good digging. And he had to bury the bomb. He had to bury the parachute. There were things that he wanted to bury. So maybe where the money was found was the burial site for all of the stuff. And that's why we haven't found anything. And maybe he flew over there. And that's called the Western Flight Path scenario. And I lean in that direction, but it's not conclusive.
Who found the money, or how was it found?
Hey, kid, there's a family, fellow by the name of Dwayne Ingram. Was a middle-aged guy, 35, 40 years old, loses his job in Arkansas or Oklahoma, something like that. And he goes visits his sister up in Vancouver, Washington, and hey sis, can you help me find a job and keep my kids fed for a couple of weeks while I get my feet on the ground? So they're in Vancouver with the sis, and Dwayne says, we need a little fun around here. Let's go for a picnic, even in the middle of February. And so they go down to the Columbia River Beach where people could go fishing, and you leave a quarter in the tip jar, and you get access to the beach. And it's called Tina Bar, and it's run by the Fazio brothers. They're still there. And so the Ingram family went down there, and one of the kids, Brian, he was 8 years old at the time, says, it's time for the hot dogs. Come on, let's build a fire. So he starts clearing the sand away and starts putting some twigs down, and his finger, his pinky finger hits something in the ground. He goes, oh, what's that? $6,000. three bundles, one on top of the other, kind of like not straight on, but kind of square. And the FBI agents, so they told the cops, and we found money, and then pretty shortly, within hours, it was determined, because of the serial numbers, was determined to be Cooper ransom money. And that's when things really got interesting. And the place was swarming with FBI agents, and they started digging up the beach like crazy. And the agents told me, and I saw pictures, that they found shards of $20 bills about that big, so bigger than your thumb, and you could read a serial number or a part of a serial number on some of these shards. And I saw pictures of them putting the shards in plasticine evidence envelopes, and those evidence envelopes have never been seen again. No one to this day has reports them. There's no documentation on them. Nobody received. There's no documentation on who received them, where they were stored, who delivered them. They weren't in evidence in Seattle when the case was closed in 2016. I talked to the people in the Portland office who did the digging, and it was their hands on the shovels. And it's like, yeah, we gave everything to Seattle. So somewhere between the beach and Seattle, those shards disappeared. And nobody knows. Another one of these, is it corruption? Is it malfeasance? Is it, stuff happens? We lost them. All right. I don't know. But again, I call that sloppy police work, and I'm really anti-sloppy police work. And if you screw up, I really put a lot of stock on owning it, saying, yeah, we screwed that one up. Yeah, we lost them. We shouldn't have, but we did. And there's everything in the Cooper case that the FBI did find has been lost. Cigarette butts, gone. Hair follicles that they got off the headrest, missing. Last time that they had the hair follicles was 1984. After that, gone. Where'd they go? Who took them? Why? Nothing. And no one's looking.
Was the supposition as far as the finding the money, was that Cooper buried the money there or just somehow got covered up, fell in the water and got covered up?
Yeah, well, here, one thing we do know is the money was wet. So it was in water and it was pretty compressed. The bills were stuck together. In fact, one of the reasons they called the cops was because they couldn't spend the money. They couldn't pull the bills apart. And it's like, what are we going to do with it? Well, let's just give it to the cops. Let them figure it out. Maybe we get the reward. We can spend the reward money. That's just as green, and not as wet. So the FBI had to face the problem of what do we do with soggy bills that are stuck together. And so there's a lot of bill fragments and bill dust and things. And I lost track of what the question was.
Well, it was about whether Cooper buried the money there or somehow
right.
just got covered up.
Yeah, we now know that it's unlikely that the bills arrived by natural means. Because if he jumped where they think he jumped and he landed, he landed one way or the other. He either landed splat or he landed under a parachute. He was on the ground because he wasn't on the plane. And the bills, a lot of people felt up until very recently that, well, maybe the bills got separated from him coming, down, and the wind blew the bills away and it landed in a river and it floated down to Tina Bar and got buried and things like that. Well, here's what we know now. The bills that were found, some of them have been analyzed for the aquatic creatures that live on them in the water that would stick to the bills. And they found that there's a particular creature called a diatom, which is fairly, it's like a miniature shell and almost microscopic. You need a microscope to see it. And what was discovered on the bills was thousands of them. But the species of diatoms that were found on the bills only bloom in the summertime, not the winter. There's another species of diatom that bloom in the wintertime, and they ain't on the bill. There's none of them on the bill. So that means the money did not enter the water, the Columbia River, the night of the skyjacking. So the money arrived at Tina Bar sometime after the skyjacking, or only got wet after the skyjacking. Here's a scenario that would satisfy all this. If Cooper landed near Tina Bar and buried the money on the beach, he may have, we know he buried it because where it was found was 40 feet from the river's edge. And a lot of erosion had taken place. They stopped putting the dredge spoils from the Columbia River back on the beach in 1974, resulting in a lot of erosion. So if you go to the Tina Bar where the money was found, if you go there now, today, it looks very, very different now than it did back in 1971. And the likeliest scenario, Cooper lands near the beach, digs big holes in the sand to bury everything, and they're buried down deep. But 6 years worth of erosion lowers the level of the beach sufficiently so an 8-year-old kid on a weenie roast can find the bills under a few grains of sand. And everything else probably got swept out during some kind of flood, some spring flood. There were spring floods in 72, there were spring floods in 78, and maybe everything got stripped out, the parachutes and the bomb and the rest of the money. We don't know. All we know is, how do you explain the money being at the beach and only having summertime bills, summertime diatoms. And the speculation is Cooper buried the money, came back in the spring when the river started coming up on the spring tides, and took his money out. And in the dark, left 3 bundles of money, and maybe crumpled up some other bills as he pulling them out, and they're ripping and tearing. They've been buried for years. And he left a couple in the bottom. And then the floodwaters came in, exposing springtime, summertime diatoms to the bills, and then recovered them with sand. And then the kid found them a year or 2 later. That's the kind of thinking that's going on. Is that what happened? Nobody knows. But it's the most plausible explanation to answer the facts as we know them now.
So no other bills with the appropriate serial numbers showed up anywhere else?
No. There's never been a bill found in circulation whatsoever. It's another mystery. It's highly unlikely. They were $10,000 $20 bills.
Yeah. And
it's a lot of bills out there. And we don't know. It's hard to determine where you would launder these bills and not get any detection. Could you take them overseas? There's been a lot of thinking, well, maybe you take them to a casino where you can just get them into the system very quickly, and no one's going to check serial numbers in a casino. Or you take them to overseas casinos like Monaco, or in Asia, like Macau, and American money, dollar bills are just like gold over there. We know they just want to hold on to them. And there's another possibility that is rarely talked about. Was this money, did it enter the black market? Did it enter the black economy? And something that people don't talk about much and is not widely known is how big the black economy is. When you start talking about all the drug money, you start talking about sex trafficking money, bribery money, gun smuggling money, there's billions and billions of dollars that is tied up in the underground economy. And there's financial institutions that have been created to manage all that. And it's getting information about that. It's tough. And I have not been able to find much information about all of that. The question is, did Cooper's money end up there?
It implies that Cooper knew how to navigate that world. I find it 6,000. I mean, the only explanation you outlined here is that it was all there at once, and a lot of it got lost, or he came back to get some, or that part kind of doesn't add up to me.
It's hard to swallow. Yeah.
Why would there be just a few bundles? It's almost like I'll place it here as a diversion, and I'll give up the $6 grand or whatever. I'll take the other 1.4 million, whatever, 194,000. But that's weird. But you could overlook it, except for the things that you also outlined regarding the loss of the evidence too, especially in such a high profile case with so many people working on it. That's the biggest red flag in anything, that everyone's focused on it, but yet somehow the chain of custody of the most important things has been broken somewhere, and no one has a clue about it. Well, hey, isn't that convenient? So, we like to go into conspiracy land on this show for sure. We're not scared to tread there. And I want to know, Bruce, how you feel about this being some sort of false flag, some sort of inside job. Was it FBI met Cooper when he landed, they took him away, they planted something, blah, blah, blah? I mean, you could go a million different ways, right? Especially somebody like you who knows so many details about this thing. You could construct a lot of elaborate things. So I want to know what you think about that. And I apologize, I hadn't gotten a chance to read the book. I know Dan did, and you may have gone there in the book. So let us know. I mean, don't spoil anything for the listeners, but I like to know how far you went into the woods.
here's how far I go into the woods. If I had to make a bet on who Cooper was and how come nothing's been found other than these few bundles of money, what's it all about? What happened? I'd make the bet, and it'd be a small wager. I wouldn't bet the house.
Yeah, smart.
Couple 20s. All right. Cooper knew more about the plane, the 727, than the pilots, anybody in flight control at Northwest Orient, and anybody in aviation that Northwest Orient officials at SeaTac Airport had readily access to. It took them calling corporate headquarters, who contacted the FBI, who contacted the CIA, to reassure them that Cooper knew what he was doing and that flying with the F stairs down was going to be safe, and your pilots weren't on a suicide mission. So right off the bat, he has advanced knowledge that is comparable to what a commando would know. He jumped at night in a borrowed parachute in the rain in 40-degree temperatures into the dark, and he couldn't see the ground because he's jumping into clouds. He's jumping into rain clouds. That's a ballsy guy. Okay. He was in control of the passengers and the crew for 2.5 hours as they're circling the airport and never broke a sweat. Like I said, command presence. The man, this was not his first rodeo.
Yeah.
Now, looking at a bigger picture, what was the impact of the Cooper skyjacking? After Cooper, aviation safety in the United States changed fundamentally, almost instantaneously. It was like a switch got flipped. And when you look at the details, one begins to wonder this major change. So after Cooper, we had the early beginnings of what we now call the TSA. So before Cooper, you could get on the plane with a gun, a bomb, a machete, a samurai sword. You could get on with anything, all right? After Cooper, all bags were screened. People had to walk through metal detectors. Were they as fancy and as comprehensive as we have now? No. But they picked up a lot of stuff, all right? And every airport had the same equipment and the same procedures. It was comprehensive. There was no cheap cost-cutting airline or airport that was a weak link in this safety chain. It was comprehensive across the United States. And this change in safety, this federalization of airline safety, occurred under the administration of Richard Nixon, a conservative Republican president whose political philosophy was antithetical to doing this. So what changed his mind? And how early were these changes conceived and formulated and implemented so that you could have the legislation and the funding and the technological specifications and the manufacturing and the training of all the things that were in place within 12 months of Cooper skyjacking? Things of this scale do not happen in a 12-month period. Easily, they can, but it's more plausible to think that these kinds of actions were in place before Cooper, and Cooper served, he was just a clog in the wheel to give political support and motivation to the Nixon administration to make this shift philosophically, politically.
It's almost like the Osama bin Laden attack on the World Trade Center ushers in the Patriot Act.
Yeah.
Similar
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah, a major event has an enormous ripple effect, you know, where we now have surveillance cameras everywhere. You know, I looked in my doctor's office today and I was surprised. There's no surveillance camera here. Wow.
I want to take us
How
in,
many people are sitting in an office in this country and
not
then
have
being
a,
filmed?
yeah.
Not many. I was one of a few.
I want to be conscientious about our time with Bruce. So one area I'd like to go into briefly, and then Dave, if you have something else you want to end up with, I'm interested in who the possible suspects were, and obviously they haven't found DB Cooper, but listening to another interview that you gave and reading your book, so Ted Kaczynski was at one point in time considered a suspect in
Yes. Yeah.
who's Ted
Kaczynski's the
Kaczynski?
Unabomber.
The Unabomber. So what
Yeah.
about him?
Yeah. Well, he wasn't Cooper.
Yeah.
Um, and I just think that that's kind of how the thinking can take place in the FBI. Ted Kaczynski, as far as we know, had no skydiving abilities, didn't know how to put a parachute on his back or anything like that. But there's something about him that captures the imagination, that makes, when you're hanging out with your fellow agents, your fellow cops at the water cooler, and you're spitballing ideas, and maybe he was this and maybe that, and the Zodiac killer, he's still on the loose. Maybe he's
Mhm.
it's like, oh, come on, let's get real, people. Come on, calm down. Like Taylor Swift says, you need to calm down, please. And there's other people that keep spitballing these ideas out that no. I believe we're going to solve the case.
Okay.
Our forensic sciences, our forensic tools keep getting better and better. DNA might be the breakthrough. We might find 2 epithelial cells on the tie or on the not used parachute. We know Cooper looked at certain packing cards on the parachute containers on the cloth, and he cut some rope, and maybe that rope has some of his skin cells in it. We only need a couple epithelial cells, we can get his DNA. It's like, oh my God, that'll be a game changer. I also am a big believer in the woo-woo. Okay, consciousness and energy, remote viewing.
Remote viewing, right?
Yeah, remote viewing. Our abilities to transcend time and space using consciousness. It keeps getting better and better. And military is already using it, trying to use it as an investigative and intelligence tool. We keep on going on that. So I think when we find out who DB Cooper is, everyone in the world is going to say, who the hell is that?
Yeah.
So all the suspects, there have been 900 people have confessed to being DB Cooper.
Wow.
The FBI has investigated 1,100 suspects that they considered viable. So that's 2,000 people right there. All right. DB Cooper ain't not one of them for my money. Was he a commando? I don't know. He could have been Commando's brother, who told him how to do this, or somebody that liked to hang out in bars that where the secret ops guys hang out in Saigon.
Dave, why don't you take us home here if you have something else you want to?
I wasn't particularly familiar with this case, but now I see why it's fascinated us for 50 plus years, and it seems like it'll keep going too, if Bruce is correct here, and I'm sure he is, that those forensic tools we could have never imagined that long ago. The perfect crime all of a sudden becomes imperfect, at the microscopic level. So I hope I hope you're right, Bruce, that we get some breakthroughs with that stuff. That's always fascinating. We could go on with questions, but I know we're over an hour now, I think. And it's been fun, and I want Bruce to tell us the name of his book again, because it sounds like it's full of such good stuff.
And where we can get it.
And
500 pages worth of good stuff. The title of the book is DB Cooper and the FBI, a case study of America's only unsolved skyjacking. And you can get it through Amazon very easily. But it's also available in bookstores, but they have to special order it from the publisher. And so that takes, a week or two, something like that. But those are the places, I periodically salt bookshelves with a few copies, kind of get the ball rolling. So Powell's in Portland has copies of my book, and SeaTac, some of the Hudson News kiosks at SeaTac have my book.
Good strategy.
Well,
we'll get a few listeners to run out and get it, because that's a very engaging, complex case, more so than I realized. All the kind of loose ends still hanging out there. A lot of food for thought here.
yeah, and as we're talking, I think another aspect too, as I think over time, the FBI, the particular agents, will be more thoughtful and better trained. They're still making stupid mistakes. I had a report from another researcher. His name is Galen Cook. And he was meeting with the case agent who closed the case in 2016. He met with him a couple years beforehand. And they were talking about DNA and developing a DNA database on Cooper suspects. And there have been dozens of letters sent to the FBI or to different media outlets with guys claiming to be DB Cooper. It's like, I did it, Tanya. Yeah, you didn't catch me. You don't know who I am, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Well, they licked the stamp and they licked the envelope. And the FBI has a collection of these. And so my buddy Galen Cook, the researcher, was talking to Curtis Eng, the case agent, discussing this database that they're developing. In the course of it, Curtis picked up one of the envelopes that they had gotten. Now it's a 50-year-old envelope with a 50-year-old stamp. And as he's handing the envelope to Galen, the stamp unglues itself. It peels off and floats to the floor. And Curtis bends over with his hands and picks it up. He puts it back on his desk. He didn't glove himself. He didn't use tongs. He didn't use another piece of paper to kind of jimmy it under the stamp to kind of lift it up. He picked it up with his friggin' fingers.
Yeah.
This is a man who's been a federal agent for 20 years, still doing stupid stuff.
Well, we're all being cataloged somewhere, is the feeling I get.
That's probably true. Well, Bruce, thank you for spending some time with us again. Very interesting. Always like mysteries. Always like mysteries, and you've certainly illuminated DB Cooper, whose name, by the way, was not DB Cooper, right? Was it
Exactly.
Dan Cooper?
That's another clue.
Yeah.
If you find somebody with $200,000 in their back pocket and says, "Yeah, I stole an airplane," and he calls himself DB Cooper, you can say, "Well, what was your real name?" And the name that the skyjacker used and bought his ticket was Dan Cooper. And DB came from a misunderstanding between a couple of journalists in the Portland FBI office who were overhearing phone call from the FBI agents in SeaTac calling the FBI in Portland. And they're saying, "We have a guy, we think he's D. Cooper," reading off the manifest. And what the reporters heard is the guy in Portland saying, "Is that D. Cooper or B. Cooper?" All right. And then the guy in Seattle is saying something, and the guy in Portland is going, "Oh, okay. Yeah, I got it now." And the reporters are saying, "Are you looking for DB Cooper?" And the guy goes, "Yeah, that's who we're looking for." Now, as it turns out, in Portland, there was a known petty criminal by the name of DB Cooper. And they sent a cop out to see if he was home, and he was. He was watching the Skyjacking on TV.
Not him, then. Huh?
He lived in the Dales.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's a real life DB Cooper, but he's not the Skyjacker.
He doesn't have.
It's not the Skyjack.
He doesn't have $200,000,
No,
unfortunately.
Right.
he was broke. He had to go rob another liquor store somewhere, pay the rent.
Great. Well, thanks, Bruce.
Well,
That was very entertaining.
yes.
You're a great storyteller too, and that's
Thank you.
that
Thank you.
adds to the mystique of the whole thing.
It's always fun to be with you guys. Think of something else for me to talk about.
Yeah,
Give me a holler. Come on.
We'll talk to you again.
Okay.
Well, Bruce gave me a copy of a book he's writing, and there are a bunch of stories in there that we could spin off of. So
Okay.
I think that might be another show down the road. Once again, thanks a lot, Bruce, and we hope
Okay, my pleasure.
to
Dan.
see you soon. Maybe at Stranger Things, and Dave, maybe see you there too.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll
I'm
come down
gonna
for
end
that
the show.
near-death experience stuff. I'll be down there. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. All
Have a
right.
good night.
And maybe you should mention a couple of upcoming shows. Gwen's trying to get me in the habit of mentioning upcoming shows. So coming this week, toward the end of the week, we have Mark Ollie, who's an archaeologist, ufologist from Great Britain. He's going to be talking about the British equivalent of Roswell, which I've seen some stuff about that. And then I'm going to be on the podcast talking about Mothman coming up here in the not too distant future. So make sure to, if you're on our YouTube channel, like and subscribe, and that'll make us happy.
Mhm. All right.
All right.
Good night, guys. Thank you, Bruce.
Good night. Until
Yeah,
then.
thanks a lot.